Hello, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. It's a strange thing not being able to see all your faces, but thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. For me, at least in LA, it's 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and it's a really exciting occasion to be able to have the other art fair back up and running. And I know it's not in person, but what the Other Art Fair team have done, led by Ryan Stanier, the founder of the fair, is absolutely phenomenal. And I've had a quick go through the fair myself today, and it really is extraordinary what they have done. This is the kind of thing that I've been dreaming could happen one day, and they've done it, and it just looks amazing. The curation is absolutely stunning. The range of artists is really exceptional. So I think you're going to have a great time going around the fair. And what I'm going to do is really just to give you a bit of context as you go around the fair. Hopefully some of the things that I'm going to say might be helpful. And I know you're probably all really dying to get going with that part of it, which will be much more fun than listening to me. But I'll just say a few things about my background and why I might even be giving this talk. And then a little bit about not only the Other Art Fair, but also Saatchi Art, because that's really where I come into the picture with all of this. So I'll start by that, and then we'll move on to talking a little bit about investing in art and some of the things to look out for when you're thinking of buying an artwork, whether it's at a fair, online, virtually, in a gallery, coming to Saatchi Art after the fair. So it's just some of the things that over the last 15, 20 years, I've sort of begun to think more about as I look at an artwork. And then the really fun part will be actually looking at some of the artists at the fair, just a very small handful of some of the artists who I'm really excited about, but I could have chosen many more. So it's just a really nice range, I think, to get started with. So first of all, I should have said my name is Rebecca Wilson, and I am the Chief Curator and VP of Art Advisory at Saatchi Art. And my background is that for 7 years I worked as one of the directors of the Saatchi Gallery in London. And I mention that because I think it's really sort of the foundation, in a way, of Saatchi Art and what connects us with the Other Art Fair, which is that the gallery has a very long tradition of discovering and supporting emerging artists. And that's something that has been going on for years and years, and we all carry with us. And it's our real passion and drive is to find really outstanding artists, to give them opportunities that maybe the brick and mortar, more traditional gallery world has not always been able to offer. And then to give all of you people who love art the chance to discover their work. So yeah, I've been doing this for about 15 years, helping people to acquire art, helping to build art collections for all sorts of different kinds of clients. And Saatchi Art we began about 10 years ago, and we've really built it into quite a remarkable thing, I think, in a way. You know, we represent artists from 100,000 countries. It's pretty phenomenal, the range of works that you can see on the site. And in partnership with the Other Art Fair, we now have a really wonderful opportunity for people to see artists and meet them in person and virtually, and you're going to be able to make appointments to actually talk directly with artists, which is such a rewarding and really illuminating experience. So yeah, I mean, in terms of focusing on investing in art, as I said, over the years, you know, there are various things that I've really begun to fasten on in terms of looking about art and trying to understand what I like and why I like it. And one of the main things I think, and any art advisor would say this to you, is really to gravitate towards the works that you love. And there's a reason that certain works, as you go around the fair or a gallery, whether it's online or in person, there are going to be certain works that you're drawn to, and that's really what what the goal is. It's a bit like meeting somebody and you know that you're going to fall in love with them or they're going to be a great friend. Those are the kinds of visceral responses that art can give you as well. So really kind of, if you're drawn to something, then usually it's good to go with that feeling. But then you might want to ask more questions about why it is that you like that work. And it can be really sort of simple things to do with the emotion that it creates in you. And that can be something to do with the subject matter. It could be to do with the colors, all sorts of more sort of aesthetic things like that can come into play. And then you might want to think about the story behind the work. And then in tandem with that, the story that the artist has and what has inspired them to make this particular work. What's their story? Where do they come from? What kind of life have they had? Why are they making the work that they're making? If it's a figurative painting, why is the subject matter as it is? And so I think all of those questions can be really fascinating, and it's a way of us also connecting and relating to the very kind of creative people that are making the works that you're looking at. And one of the really lovely things about Saatchi Art, and we've always had it as a mission right from the beginning, and the other art fair shares this completely, is to be very, very transparent with this kind of information. So if you come to Saatchi Art, you'll see lots of information about the artist, about the artwork, and of course pricing is transparent as well. And at the other art fair, it's the same thing. I know this is a virtual experience, and in many ways it's just extraordinary what the kind of experience I think you're going to have. But you're still going to be able to talk to the artists, which I think is so wonderful. And you can ask them all sorts of questions about their works and why they're making the work that they're making and how they're making it. And something else that I think can be worth considering is the question of education. One of the things that I've spent a lot of time doing is going to degree shows, to MFA shows, and looking for really young emerging artists at that very, very early stage in their careers, and wanting to support them and help them to get on with their work and their passion for making art. So I think education is really, really interesting. But I think also, there are many, many artists who are self-taught, and I think that's absolutely fantastic too. And as with many things that I'm going to be talking about, there are incredible precedents in the art historical world. And if you think of some of the artists that you really love in terms of old masters, they didn't go to art school. Van Gogh didn't go to art school. He worked for an art dealer from a young age, but he didn't have any formal training. Henri Rousseau, for example, he didn't have any formal education in an art school either. But these are artists who are in all of the best museums all over the world. So if an artist says that they're self-taught, that's a really wonderful thing, because just imagine how much education themselves they've had to do in terms of understanding the history of art, where they fit into that, learning to make whatever they're making, doing that themselves, all of the trial and error and experimentation that has gone into them being able to show their works with us and at the fair. And then I guess moving on from that, just to think about the actual execution of the work. And we'll start looking at some works, and apologies for the static image at the moment. But yeah, just to think about the execution and how a work is actually made, what technical skills and ability have gone into creating the work. And obviously if you're looking at a work in person, you can get up really close to it. And with the virtual gallery, you can also zoom right in and get up really close to work. So you can begin to really get a sense of how the work that you're interested in has been put together and created. And of course, without any ideas, the works wouldn't get made in the first place. So I think thinking about the concept behind the work, the ideas behind it, and it connects also with what I was saying earlier about the story behind the work. That's an important thing to think about, and it's something that artists might give in an artist statement, or you can ask them as well. And usually very, very interesting answers would be given by artists about this. And I think it's an interesting thing to think about and ask about, because I mean, sometimes I'll see a work and I'll just love it, and I sort of don't care about anything that I've just mentioned, and I just love it, and I think I've got to have it. And you know, that's one way to go, and it's really great if you feel so strongly about something. But I think sometimes I'm interested in looking at the whole body of work of an artist, and really seeing how their ideas, the concepts that they have, carry through from one work to the next, 1 month to the next, 1 year to the next. And you see that this is an artist who is evolving, and that that artist has a rich pool of ideas to continue to draw upon. And if you're thinking about investing in an emerging artist, that's obviously an important thing, because the artist that you're looking at could be, let's say, 24, 25 years old. And, you know, it's a little bit like a writer that you love. You want to read the first novel and then, you know, think that they're actually going to still be exciting 5 novels down the road. And it's the same with artists. So thinking about the ideas and the concepts behind the work, I find really fascinating, and an important part of investing, and having, you know, the sort of longevity and the determination also to be an artist. So as I mentioned, you can definitely ask questions, all of the above, to the artists at the fair. You can book times to speak to them, and you can, of course, come to us at Saatchi Art as well if there's anything that you want to ask, or you'd like a little bit more guidance from an art advisor, or you find any of the processes of sort of contacting an artist through the fair system cumbersome. You can, of course, come to us and we'll help with that. I mentioned MFA shows. Obviously, that isn't what we're particularly interested in now, but it's something to think about if you are really excited by the idea of investing in art. I think looking at MFA shows, if there's any that are on near you, and when things get back up and running and we can go to things again in person, that would be a great thing to do. But you can also look online. You know, a lot of MFA shows are now available online. Saatchi Art every year does a lot of work around MFA shows, highlighting artists that we think are really interesting. So, you know, it's fantastic that we have the internet to really kind of enable us to get more educated, and to get our eyes more sort of familiar with all kinds of different sorts of works. And the MFA shows are really wonderful for observing trends that are going on. And you can really see what young artists are motivated by, whether it's cultural issues, or it might be some new medium or new technique. And often that can be different from country to country, as you might expect. So I think it's fantastic going to MFA shows and taking advantage of the fact that so many are now online. And we're just about to start looking at some artists, but I just had a couple of other points. One thing I think can be a good place to start in terms of budget is collecting limited editions. They tend to be much more reasonably priced than paintings or sculpture. And you know, you can get really, really wonderful screen prints, photography, monoprints. So there's a whole range of different kinds of editions. Obviously, a monoprint isn't limited because there's only one. But that can be a really, really good place to start, I think, in terms of budgets. And you shouldn't be afraid of thinking that, you know, there's no value to editioned work. You know, obviously that means it might be available, let's say 10 times or 20 times, or perhaps just 3, and even sculpture can come in editions actually. But yeah, don't be afraid of that and think that it doesn't have value, because, you know, lots of really famous artists did editions. Picasso did editions, Matisse did editions, all sorts of people, and you see their editions coming up for sale at auction at really quite considerable prices. And then I just wanted to mention and emphasize that all the artists that you're seeing today and at the fair, they're all emerging artists. And this is the most exciting end of the art world spectrum, in a way, for us all to be looking at in terms of investing in art, because there is huge potential. Many of the artists whose works you're going to see, they also work with brick and mortar galleries, but some don't. And what tends to happen if a brick and mortar gallery gets involved is they double the prices. So this is a really, really fantastic opportunity, not only to discover artists that are fresh, and lots of people are not yet going to know about them, but the prices are very reasonable. So that's really one of the great things about looking at the work of emerging artists. And of course, also it's fantastic to support young artists who really need all the help that they can get so early on in their careers. So let's look at some works, and then I'll say a little bit more just about putting together collections right at the end, in terms of sort of theme, which can also be a fun way to go about things. But I think we should look at some works, and let's see if this, yeah. So the first artist I'm really excited about and have been for a while is David McLaughlin, who lives in Dallas. And as you can see from this particular work, he's really inspired by historical paintings, old master paintings, and he combines this with all sorts of elements that we recognize from pop art, and particularly in the 1960s. There's a kind of wonderful irreverence to his work, which I really like. And technically, we just move on. Technically, they are incredibly skilled, as you can see from this. These are paintings. So the detail is really, really wonderful. And I think the conjunction of styles is really, really distinctive. So as you can see here, there's this face, which is obviously inspired by an old master painting, and he references Caravaggio as being one of the influences on him. But at the same time, he also says, he might be inspired by seeing paper peeling from a billboard. So it's a very, very wide range of influences. And I think that we go to this last piece by him. This is an incredible sort of dialogue that he's setting up within the painting, a sort of contemporary pixelated version, in a way, of this old master painting, and he's bringing the two together in a very novel, distinctive way. And that reminds me to say that that the other thing that we're looking at all the time, and we'll see it as we move through this selection of artists, is that an artist is striving to have a sort of signature style. So you're wanting to try and feel that if you're looking at the work of David McLaughlin, it doesn't look like another artist. Obviously, he's playing with old master reinterpretations, and that's a whole different question. But what he's doing is something that is very, very distinctive with him. So I definitely would look out for him. And then this is another artist who I've been following for a while, called Steve McPherson, who's from Kent, which is by the coast in the UK. And these are really interesting on all kinds of levels, and I think particularly environmentally. So what he does is he takes kind of daily walks by the coast where he lives, and he picks up litter, he picks up trash, and what he's looking for is he's a sort of scavenger, a treasure hunter, I think he describes himself as. So he picks up discarded plastic. So all of the works that he makes, they're all made out of plastic. Little bits of bottles, bottle tops, twine, all sorts of different things that are washed ashore. And he picks them up and he turns them into these beautiful sort of collages, in a way. And one of the things I think that an artist also is an alchemist. And they have this incredible ability, which the rest of us don't have, to turn discarded things, all sorts of stuff that we would just walk by, into these really, really beautiful, beautiful objects. And they are beautiful in terms of the form, the colors. It's like he's a painter, but using all of these pieces of plastic to make these incredible works. The arrangement of them, as I say, as well as the colors, I think is really, really beautiful. This is slightly hard to see, but it's some of his most recent work where actually these they look like little figures. They're all made out of sort of plastic twine that he winds and makes these little shapes out of, and each one is pinned to the white board that you can see in this image. So it's a very, very delicate work, and really, really stunning to kind of get close to and see the detail. And as I mentioned at the beginning about them being sort of environmentally interesting, I think he sort of feels, without being too kind of grand about it, that they are a kind of sort of record of the history of the world sort of now. You know, you can read into this all sorts of things about how we live and our behavior as human beings, and that they are a kind of document of that in a way, as well as being these very beautiful pieces of art. They're also very, very labor intensive. They take a long time to make, and he rarely has works for sale. And he's made some works especially for the global launch of the other art fair. So we're really, really excited to be able to have them included in the fair that you're going to be able to see. And then this is an artist called Genevieve Levy. And she's British, and she lives in Belgrade in Serbia, where she has her studio. And I'm just also very conscious of how sort of international both Saatchi Art and the other art fair are. And it's really wonderful to think that, you know, wherever you all are, we're all sort of connected, and you're going to see artists from all over the place, which I think is a rare thing and just so wonderful. Anyway, so about Genevieve, I suppose, is the French Genevieve, I think is how British people say it. Anyway, she makes these really lovely free abstract paintings. Couldn't be more different from David McLaughlin, who we looked at first of all. They're very gestural, very, very spontaneous. They're this sort of wet on wet process where she paints the black background. It's very, very wet. And then she applies the other paint that you can see on top of it. And it's the conjunction of those two things coming together with the incredible brush that she uses that produces this really, really stunning, very distinctive work. And here's another example, and one more. And I think that you know, she talks about being inspired also by Zen Buddhism and Asian art, and I think you can definitely see that in her work. But I think there's also something very distinctive about it in terms of the colours and the sort of the forms that she brings into it, particularly with this newer series, which is this image here. And I also just wanted to mention, I think one of the really, really exciting things about making art can be the mistakes that get made, the things that you don't know are going to happen. So you can start out with all of your materials, and you have a rough sense of what's going to go on, but you don't know exactly. And I think that's what this work is also capturing, which is a very kind of liberating feeling. And I think we get some of that when we look at the work that she's making. And that's not to say that she hasn't, you know, as I said right at the beginning, you know, she's done all sorts of trial and error, and you know, making lots and lots of works which have been thrown away, and in order to get to you know, to where she is now. So I think they're very, very beautiful. And next, we'll move on to Dawn Beckles, who lives in London, and her paintings are very, very vibrant in colour, and they are all interiors or still lives. So she's playing on a very old tradition in the history of painting, but bringing it right up to the 21st century. And the other thing that I think is very distinctive about her work, and particularly in this piece, but no, actually not in the other works. In this work, and then lots of others you'll see if you explore her work further, is that she brings in lots of exotic flowers, and obviously the flowers that you can see here, but also on the vase, which are a reminder of her childhood in Bermuda. So that's where she was brought up, and it obviously still plays a big part in her works, and perhaps in the vibrancy of the colours that she chooses to work with. And so, yeah, as I mentioned, lots of interiors. And I think one of the things I really, really love about her work is that she's painting paintings in her paintings. So there's lots of different artworks in this particular interior. So she's immediately setting up little clues and narrative little fragments, and it's really great to then sort of start imagining, well, you know, who is this art collector, if that's what it is, and who lives in this place that she's painting, and is this a wonderful door out into a courtyard, or is it a mirror? I mean, there's all sorts of different things that you could think of as you look at this painting. And I think the unanswered questions are what I find really exciting about all of this, and all of the different details that sort of inspire all kinds of thoughts. And maybe if you speak to her, she might even answer some of the questions as well. And here's another example with this really fun painting on the wall and these two little dogs, and again, inviting you to think about the person, I think, that might actually be owning these things and living in this space. And I should mention as we go along that all of these artists are gaining recognition, whether that's from other galleries being invited to show in group shows, being invited to participate in other fairs, in some cases winning prizes, in some cases being nominated for prizes. And these are all things to look out for, and they're signs that an artist, as I say, is really kind of gaining momentum and has the potential to go much further. And then moving on to something really different. This is Mark Rebanak, who's from Long Beach in California. And emotionally, I think they're very different from anything else that we've looked at so far, in fact. And this is from a series that is called Exhale. And what I really like about these is that the sort of concept and the process, the execution, are very, very tightly linked. So what he does is each line that you can see in each of his works is drawn freehand by him, moving from one side of the page to the other, pushing forward with his pencil. And each line goes on for as long as it takes him to exhale. And then he starts to make another line. And over time, that there are little, what he calls sort of imperfections, I think, or maybe that's my word, but anyway, that the straight line begins to deviate as he moves forward with each line, and these little blips and bumps occur as he keeps going with his pencil. They're not planned. There's no sort of graph beneath the lines that he's kind of working towards. There's no mapping out done in advance at all. It's all just the process of moving forward and exhaling. And over time, what happens is these wonderful wavy lines begin to occur in the works. So they're very, very meditative. And I think in looking at them, we begin to get a really strong sense of also how he was feeling when he was making them. So they're quite moving, I think, in that sense, and very, very beautiful in a minimalist way. And I love the sort of unplanned rhythm that they have. This is another one with gold on black, which is particularly beautiful, I think. And just a few more artists before we move on to questions. This is an artist called Dave McClinton, who's from Austin in Texas. And he has a couple of different series that are sort of ongoing for him. And this is a series really about cultural issues, and particularly issues of race in America. And the people in his works, he says, are a sort of amalgam of different people in his life. So they're kind of autobiographical. They're a mix of all sorts of people that he knows. And I think he describes the works as wanting to try and give a sense to people of what the inner life of a Black person is like. And obviously they're steeped in history, as well as being very, very close to his heart. And there's something sort of universal that I think speaks to us in them, and certainly with me makes me want to learn much, much more about them and find out more about him and his connection with all of the sort of the imagery that he's brought together in each work. And then the second series that he's working on are these really, really stunning landscapes. And they came about originally, I think, slightly by accident with sort of crumpled paper that he was, sort of wrinkling paper. And he began to see that they were, like sort of mountains in their formation. And he started photographing them and playing with color. And that's the result of this series. And there's more than these two. And I particularly like the forms and the colors in these two. So that's Dave McClinton. And then just two more artists before we move on to questions. So this is Marianne Hendricks from Amsterdam. And she has focused a lot of her, these are paintings, she's focused a lot of her time as an artist on botanical paintings in all sorts of different formations. They're on a relatively small scale, maybe about 20 to 30 inches tall. And they're very, very beautifully painted and really, really stunning. There's something very, very, I was going to say simplistic, and then I was wanting to take it back as soon as I said it, because that suggests that they're easy to paint, which they're not at all. But there's something sort of minimalist in the way she's painting these botanical, these flowers. But she has recently moved, or leaves, I should say, sorry. She's recently moved on to making a new series of work, which I think is really, really stunning. These peaches, which it feels as if you could take one out of the box. I mean, they are so dimensional, and they feel so real and soft. She's captured the softness of the skin of the peach, I think. And I'm wondering if she's also very conscious of the whole Dutch and Flemish tradition of painting still lives. I feel that she must have looked at a lot of still life painting as well. And then I really like this one. It's just this little fly caught in the middle of the painting, which also makes me laugh as well. And then just to end with, in terms of the artist, is Chloe McCarrick, who's from London. And I wanted to mention Chloe's work for a number of reasons. One is that she makes cyanotypes, which are a form of printing. And this is a sort of, she spends a lot of time in the darkroom combining chemicals in order to create the cyanotypes, blending kind of art and science. And each print is a monotype. There's only one. So there is some similarity you might see in her portfolio, and as you look at her work, you will see similar subject matter, but each one is completely is a different work. So that's an important thing to bear in mind about the cyanotypes that she makes. And I'm also interested in her subjects. This is a lovely one. And then also this one. And she's very, very interested in female empowerment and historical figures who have sort of defied gender roles. So, for example, the pilot Amelia Earhart and the physicist Marie Curie are two of the subjects that she is continually drawn to. There's lovely gold leaf often applied. She makes original pieces as well as prints, but using the same cyanotype. She makes the prints and then she cuts them and makes them into these sort of dimensional collage pieces as well. So those are the artists that I wanted to mention. And then just before we get to questions, I just wanted to say a little bit about putting together a collection. I mean, obviously, you might just want to buy one work, and that's, of course, fantastic, totally fine. But as you continue to think about art and look at it, you might want to think, well, would it be stimulating to focus on one medium? Would it be, am I really passionate about photography, for example? And there are all sorts of well-known collectors who have just focused on photography. Elton John is a big name in that particular world, and has shown his photography collection at Tate in London and other places. So that's something you could do, or you could focus on works on paper. You could focus on small works. I'm always going on about this lovely couple, Herb and Dorothy Vogel. Some of you might know about them because there was a wonderful film made about them. They're art collectors, no longer living. But in the 60s, they started to put together a really wonderful collection of art. They lived in New York. He worked for the Postal Service, and they didn't have very much money, but they really loved art. And they used to spend all of their spare time going to galleries and getting to know artists. And they had a few criteria. And one of them was that whatever they bought, they had to be able to carry it home. So they ended up with this really wonderful collection of fairly small works. And over the years, they collected really famous artists who, they weren't famous when they were collecting them. So lots of emerging artists like I've just shown you. And shortly before they died, I think it was, or possibly after one of them had died, they donated the entire collection to the National Gallery of Art in Washington. So it was a lovely way to put together a collection that had a sort of meaning behind it, at least for them. And the collection was very eclectic, but I like this fact that they had to be able to carry the work home, and they never read, I think maybe they read reviews, but they weren't led by critics. They went for what they really loved, and that's how they built their collection. So I think that's about it from me before you all start going around the fair. But I wonder if before that, if anyone has any questions, I'm very happy to answer any that you have.
We have a few questions in the Q&A section. The first is, will art that is made during the pandemic reflecting society likely have greater value?
Oh, what a fascinating question. Well, I think that it's obviously something that is all, is very much at the forefront of all of our minds, which is an obvious thing to say, but maybe we are beginning to want to have some sort of understanding of what's kind of gone on beyond the science. And I think artists are really fantastic at interpreting, I mean, that's what they do, interpreting what has been going on, and what, that their works are very much reflections of society and a good sort of barometer in a way, in terms of thinking about what's going on. So I don't know whether they will have greater value, but I think it could have an incredible meaning for us in trying to understand sort of much more about what we've been through and how it's affected us, perhaps emotionally and mentally, and those kinds of things, which I think art can really help with. And of course, there's going to be exhibitions. I read today there's already an exhibition planned of artworks to do with the pandemic and trying to understand what has been going on. But it may be too soon to think about the value, but certainly really meaningful for everyone, all of us who are living through this.
Absolutely. The next question is also current. What are your thoughts on NFT and buying digital art?
Oh, I'm going to feel completely out of my depth with that kind of question. But yes, I think it's incredibly exciting. And it's in fact something that we've only just this week have been talking about a great deal and trying to see how we can offer artists the possibility for this to happen through Saatchi Art. So I think it's definitely a really, really exciting thing that's happening now and gaining momentum. And I think we need to be offering this to artists and certainly expanding what we are able to offer on Saatchi Art in terms of digital art, and having, you know, animated artworks, and you know, there's a lot of desire to be able to have artworks on screens, on our TVs. We worked with Samsung when they launched the frame a couple of years ago, and we curated an art collection that you can currently access if you own a frame TV. But that was sort of at the early stages of all of this, and I think things have moved on considerably. So yeah, I mean, I think it is very, very exciting. And you know, obviously with the big sale that happened at Christie's yesterday, earlier today, you know, that there's a lot of interest, and it's certainly something that artists are asking us about.
Fascinating. The next question is on using the Saatchi's Make an Offer feature, and you know, if there's protocol guidelines for first-time investors or using this feature to start collecting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have had that as an option for a while, because I think that, and it's very nicely phrased, your question. You know, the artists have all sorts of needs at certain times and might be willing to lower the price of an artwork, and you know, they might need the money, to put it frankly, and you know, I think it can be something that also helps people to get started with acquiring work, and it's been very successful for us, and I think artists really like it. I would just say, as you've hinted at here, is to obviously respect their work, and you know, usually I think a discount of an offer rather of about 20%. I think artists would not be put off by that, and it's certainly a reasonable place to start. So something in the region of that, I think would be appropriate.
And then the final question is pretty straightforward, but it's about the navigation of Saatchi. And is there a way to search by theme, for example, seascapes or portraits?
Yeah, there really is. So if you come to our site, saatchiart.com, you'll see that there are lots of different filters, and those are two that we most certainly have. So yeah, I mean, in terms of searching by theme, we definitely make that easy, and I think putting together a collection of portraits could be really fantastic, because it could be across all sorts of different styles and mediums, and just have an incredible variety within that sort of broader theme. But yeah, so you can search on Saatchi Art by theme. And you know, I should say, just to end with that, you know, if you want more help and guidance, and you have other questions, you can certainly work with one of our art advisors. We offer this service for free. You don't have to pay anything for it, but an art advisor will work with you, get on the phone, by email, and send you a collection of works around any particular theme, or if it's a room that you're decorating, or it doesn't have to be that you're particularly thinking about investing in art. It could be that you really want to, you've bought a new place to live, and you would like to have some artwork that you feel sort of resonates with you. So there's all sorts of needs and requirements and desires for art that we all have, and our team of art advisors can really help with all of that. And as I say, that there's no charge at all. And if it helps, the email address for that is curator@saatchiart.com. But obviously all of that information is available on our website. So yeah, we're really excited to help you, and I mean, hope you have a fantastic time exploring the fair. I'm about to go back in there myself right now. It's so exciting. So thank you everyone for joining.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And this recording will be available on YouTube for people who joined late or are interested in, you know, rewatching and taking everything in. So thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.